My mother never said I love you. Not once. I grew up in silence, cold dinners, quiet mornings, and a house that never echoed with laughter. I thought she didn't love me. But after she died, I found a letter and a diary hidden inside her closet. The first line said, "If you're reading this, I'm probably gone." But I was never far, and that's when I realized sometimes love speaks loudest in silence. I was born in a small town outside Portland, Oregon, a place where the fog never lifted and everyone knew each other's names. When I was 6, my father died in a car accident. It was raining that night. After the funeral, my mother changed. She didn't cry, didn't talk, didn't even say his name again. She just packed up his clothes, folded them neatly, and locked them in a wooden trunk in the attic. I remember asking, "Where did Daddy go?" She placed her hand over my chest and said, "He's far away, but he's still here." At the time, I thought she was comforting me. Now I know she was comforting herself. After that, silence filled our house. There was no music, no laughter, no warmth, just the hum of the refrigerator and the soft ticking of the kitchen clock. Mom would wake up early, make coffee, listen to the morning news, then leave for work. At night, she cooked, cleaned, paid bills, and went to bed without saying a word. No hugs. No "how was your day?" No "good night, sweetheart." When I was little, I used to envy other kids. Their moms waited for them outside school with open arms, packed lunches with heart stickers, told them they were loved every single day. My mom? She'd hand me my report card and say, "Good, keep it up." That was her version of love. And I hated it. I started working harder, top of my class, spelling bee champion, honor roll, scholarships. But no matter what I did, her reaction was the same. I know. That's good. No smile, no pride. Just words that felt empty. So I stopped trying to impress her, and I started counting the days until I could leave. When I turned 16, I finally asked her, "Why don't you ever say you love me?" She froze, her back still to me, hands in the dishwater. Then, without turning around, she said, "Because words don't mean anything. Actions do," I remember shouting back. "Then what actions?" "You don't do anything." She didn't yell. She didn't even raise her voice. She just said quietly, "You'll understand someday." But I didn't want to understand. I wanted a mother who hugged me when I cried, who told me I mattered. Instead, I got silence. A cold, polite, suffocating silence that filled every room we shared. From that day on, I started to mirror her. If she didn't talk, neither did I. If she shut down, I shut down harder. 2 women, one older, one younger, living under the same roof but worlds apart. The night before I left for college, I packed my suitcase quietly, afraid she'd stop me. She stood at the doorway holding a mug of coffee, watching me zip up my bag. "Are you really going?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "I think it's time." She nodded once. "Seattle's colder than here. Bring a warm coat," that was all. No hug, no tears. Just a door closing behind me and the sound of my own heart breaking in the silence she left behind. I moved to Seattle on a gray March morning. The city smelled like coffee and rain, and everything felt new. A skyline of strangers, buses sighing in the drizzle, and a freedom I had dreamed about since I was a kid. The apartment I rented was small, barely more than a shoebox. White walls, creaky floors, one window that looked out over a parking lot. But it was mine. No ticking clock, no quiet dinners, no mother's shadow. Just me. For the first few weeks, I felt weightless. I could stay out late, eat cereal for dinner, and nobody would tell me to be careful. I told myself this was what happiness looked like. Freedom, independence, silence that belonged to me. But silence has a strange way of changing shape. At first, it feels peaceful. Then, if you listen too long, it starts to sound like loneliness. I studied during the day and worked nights at a small coffee shop downtown. The owner, Martha, was an older woman with silver hair and a deep, steady voice. She reminded me of someone I didn't want to think about. Every evening, as we cleaned up, she'd ask, "Have you called your mom lately?" I'd force a smile and say, "We don't really talk." She'd just nod, not pushing further. But her question would linger long after I'd locked the door. It sat in my chest like a small, sharp stone. The truth was, I thought about my mom all the time. When I saw women her age buying groceries, when I smelled lavender, her favorite scent, when I saw a mother brushing her child's hair in the park, and every time I thought about calling her, something in me froze. I didn't know what scared me more, and that she wouldn't answer, or that she would, and still sound just as cold. One night, I got sick, really sick. A fever that made the walls tilt, a loneliness so heavy it felt physical. I sat on the floor with my phone in hand, my thumb hovering over the word Mom. All I had to do was tap. Just one call. But I didn't. I couldn't. Because what if she said, "Take your medicine," and hung up? What if she didn't care at all? So instead, I put the phone down and cried until I fell asleep. And in the middle of that feverish night, I swear I heard her voice, soft, distant, familiar. "Did you eat, Emily?" I woke up gasping, the room empty except for the sound of rain against the window. Maybe it was a dream. Maybe it was guilt. But for the first time in years, her voice didn't sound cold. It sounded worried. Life in Seattle went on. Work, study, repeat. I became the kind of person who smiled at coworkers and went home to microwave dinners and podcasts. I got good at pretending I didn't care. But sometimes, when the rain hit the glass just right, I'd feel it again. That dull ache behind my ribs. Then one evening, I came home from work and found a small brown package sitting outside my door. No name, no return address. Just my apartment number scribbled in black ink. Inside was a gray knitted scarf, the kind of pattern my mother used to make. No note, no explanation. Just that scarf, folded neatly and smelling faintly of lavender. I sat on the floor, holding it in my lap. The yarn was soft and warm, and when I pressed it to my face, it felt like a memory. I didn't cry. I just sat there for a long time, listening to the rain and trying not to imagine her hands weaving every thread. After that, something changed. Every time it rained, and in Seattle that means every day, I found myself looking out the window, half expecting to see her standing on the street, watching me from a distance, as if she couldn't help but check whether I was warm. I told myself it was stupid, that she probably found my address online, that she sent the scarf out of guilt, not love. But none of those thoughts stopped me from wearing it on the coldest days. The scarf became my secret, a piece of her I wasn't ready to admit I missed. Years passed. I graduated, got a job, learned how to look like an adult. My coworkers thought I was calm, self-sufficient, composed. But at night, when the city quieted and the streetlights buzzed outside, I'd sit by the window holding that scarf and wonder what it would have been like to have a mother who could simply say, "I love you," and maybe, without realizing it, that question became the thread that tied me back to her, even when I swore I had cut it long ago. I don't remember the exact day, only that it was 3:07 a.m. when the phone rang. The sound cut through the silence like a blade. Half asleep, I picked it up. A woman's voice trembled on the other end. "Is this Emily Carter?" "Yes. I'm your mother's neighbor." I'm so sorry, honey. Your mother passed away early this morning." For a moment, everything went quiet. The rain outside stopped existing. All I could hear was my heartbeat in my ears. I remember whispering, "I'm sorry, what?" "It was her heart," the woman said softly. "It happened fast. I thought you should know." I sat there in the dark, clutching the phone as if holding it tighter could undo the words. Then I hung up. The screen lit up for a second, showing my call history. Right below the new number was an old one I hadn't dialed in years. Mom, with a single missed call from weeks ago. I don't know how long I stared at it before the tears came. They weren't loud sobs, just quiet, shaking breaths that filled the room like wind through cracks in a wall. 2 days later, I was back in Portland. Snow had blanketed the roofs and the air smelled like pine and memory. Her house looked smaller than I remembered. The same peeling paint, the same wind chimes made from seashells, still swaying on the porch. Inside, everything was neat. Too neat. Her mug was still on the table, half full of cold tea. Her book lay open, a bookmark halfway through a chapter. For the first time, I realized that stillness wasn't peace. It was the absence of her. Her bedroom looked untouched. A lavender candle had burned down to its last inch. The smell hit me like a ghost. On her dresser was an envelope, yellowed and sealed with shaky handwriting, for Emily. Inside, there was a small brass key and a folded note that said, "Don't believe what you always thought about me." My throat tightened. The handwriting was hers, small, neat, deliberate. I looked around, not knowing what the key was for, until I remembered the old wooden trunk in her closet. The lock clicked open easily, like it had been waiting. Inside was a leather-bound notebook, edges worn, pages yellowed. On the cover, in faded ink, it read, "My diary." I sat on the floor, the key still warm in my hand, and opened it. The first page began with words that made my heart stop. "I know you're angry. Emily, I know you think I'm cold. But silence was the only way I knew how to protect you." I dropped the book. For a long time, I just sat there staring at it. Half of me wanted to close it forever. The other half needed to read every word. Finally, I picked it up again and began to learn who my mother really was. I read until the sun came up. The lamp cast a soft gold light over her handwriting, the same patient. Loops she used to sign school forms and grocery lists. The first entry was written the week my father died. Emily asked where her dad went. I told her he's far away but still here. She stopped crying and went to bed, hugging his sweater. I waited until she fell asleep before I let myself cry. Another entry, months later. Every night I stand by her door just to make sure she's breathing. I can't let her see me cry. She needs strength, not another broken parent. I closed my eyes. All those nights I thought she was indifferent. She had been sitting outside my door, listening. I turned the page. When she got her first bad grade, she hid it under her bed. I found it while cleaning and pretended not to. I wanted to tell her it was okay. Instead, I told her to try harder. God, I hate myself for that. Tears blurred the ink. Her words were so painfully human, not the stoic, unshakable woman I thought I knew, but someone who loved too much and didn't know how to show it. Then came the entry from the night I left home. Emily left tonight. She didn't look back. I sat on the porch until sunrise just in case she did. When the sky turned pink, I realized she wouldn't. I finished knitting the gray scarf. I'll send it before Christmas. I covered my mouth with my hand. That scarf. The one that arrived in Seattle with no name, no note. It was her. It was always her. The later entries grew shakier, shorter. I check my phone every night. I open her number, then close it. I don't know what to say. How do you tell someone you love them when you've never learned how? Another one, the doctor says my heart is weak. I don't want her to find out. I want her to remember me strong. If she ever comes back, she'll find this diary and know the truth. I wasn't cold. I was afraid. And I loved her more than she'll ever know. The last page trembled, the ink smudged by tears. Hers, maybe. If you're reading this, Emily, I hope you've already forgiven me. I couldn't breathe. Every word felt like a thread pulling me back to her, back through years of silence and distance. For the first time, I didn't see my mother as the woman who withheld love, but as the woman who never learned how to give it out loud. The snow outside the window began to fall heavier. I closed the diary and held it to my chest. For a long time, I just sat there, listening to the soft ticking of the clock, the same sound that used to make the house feel empty. Now it just felt full. I stayed in Portland for a week after the funeral. Not because I had to, but because I didn't want to leave her again. The house was quiet, but it no longer felt lonely. It felt like she was everywhere, in the smell of lavender, in the sunlight on the floorboards, in the coffee mug still resting by the sink. Each morning, I brewed coffee the way she used to. When the first sip burned my tongue, I whispered, "Good morning, Mom." No answer, of course. But I liked to imagine she heard it. One afternoon, I found a half-empty jar of strawberry jam in the fridge. A little note stuck to the lid said, in her handwriting, "The berries were perfect this year." I laughed through the tears. It was such a her thing to do, to leave behind something so ordinary, yet somehow it felt like goodbye. That night, I took her diary out to the porch. The air was cool and still. I read the last few pages again, and this time, I didn't cry, I just listened, as if she were sitting next to me, finally telling me everything she couldn't before. I realized then that love isn't always loud or gentle. Sometimes it's messy. Sometimes it hides behind habits and half-said words. Sometimes it sounds like a mother saying, "Seattle's colder. Take a coat." And maybe that was her way of saying, "I love you." Before I left Portland, I left the diary on the kitchen table, next to her mug and the jar of jam. It belonged there. It was hers, even if the words now lived in me. Driving away, I looked in the rearview mirror. For a second, I swore I saw her standing by the window, not waving, not crying, just smiling. Back in Seattle, I lived differently. I started telling people how I felt. I said thank you more often. I said I love you without waiting for the right moment. I wasn't afraid of silence anymore, because I finally understood. Silence doesn't always mean absence. Sometimes it's just love waiting to be heard. On rainy days, I wear the gray scarf. It smells faintly of lavender now. And when the wind hits just right, I swear I can feel her arms around me. I whisper, "I love you, Mom." And in the quiet that follows, I can almost hear her say it back.